The very first time I saw the love of my life, it was on a glossy magazine cover. Looking back now, I could have never imagined the kind of love story that was waiting for the two of us. A love like something out of a fairy tale, but not the kind with a happy ending. I remember the exact way the afternoon light hit that magazine cover, making the colors bleed and warp under the convenience store's fluorescent lights. I was just another face in the crowd, another heartbeat in the rhythm of the city. But then I saw him. His face, impossibly symmetrical, with those dark monolith eyes that seemed to look right through the page and into my soul. The caption called him Leo, the visual of the rising K-pop group Illusion. I bought that magazine, of course, and the next one, and the one after that. My apartment walls slowly became a shrine to a man I had never met, whose real name I would only learn months later. Our paths first crossed during a fan sign event. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the album for him to sign. When I finally reached the table, I could feel the warmth radiating from his skin. I remember thinking how small he seemed up close, not like the towering figure on stage, but just a person, with tiredness etched around his eyes and a faint, almost invisible scar above his left eyebrow. I tried to say something clever, something that would make me stand out from the hundreds of fans he'd meet that day, but all that came out was, "Your music, it saved me." He looked up then, really looked at me, and the manufactured idol's smile vanished, replaced by something genuine, something searching. His eyes, so much larger and more expressive in person, seemed to see past the fan uniform and into the lonely corners of my life. "What's your name?" he asked, and when I told him, he wrote it on the album with careful precision, adding a small star next to it. "I'll remember you, Jin," he said softly, so quietly I almost missed it. And he did. 3 months later, I received a direct message on Instagram. It was from a private account with no posts and only a handful of followers. The message was simple. "It's Leo. I remembered what you said that day. About my music saving you. I want to hear your story." My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I thought it might break free. I spent hours crafting a reply, deleting and rewriting each word until they felt right. I told him about my lonely nights, about the way I'd come home to an empty apartment after a long shift at the cafe, about how his voice had become the soundtrack to my healing from past heartbreak. His response came quickly. "Meet me tomorrow, 2 p.m. The quiet corner cafe in Ondi. Wear something inconspicuous." I arrived 15 minutes early, my hands damp with sweat. I chose a table in the back, facing the door, my heart rate accelerating every time it opened. When he walked in, I almost didn't recognize him. Gone was the platinum blonde hair, replaced by a natural dark brown. He wore a black face mask, an oversized hoodie, and a baseball cap pulled low over his eyes. He looked like any other young man in Seoul, except for the way he moved, with an innate grace that drew the eye even when he was trying to be invisible. He slid into the seat opposite me, pulling the mask down once he was settled. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled. "You came," he said, and it wasn't a question. "You asked," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought that you'd hear from me again." He finished for me. "I know, but I meant what I said. I wanted to know you." The waitress came, and we ordered coffees in awkward silence. When she left, he reached across the table, his fingers brushing against mine. The contact was electric, sending a jolt through my entire body. "I don't do this," he said suddenly, his eyes searching mine. "Ever. But there was something about you that day, something that felt real." I swallowed hard. "Everything about me is real. That's the problem, isn't it?" He flinched slightly at my words, and I instantly regretted my tone. But then he surprised me by laughing softly. "You're right," he said. "Everything about my world is manufactured. The smiles, the fan service, even the way I'm told to look at the camera. But this feels like the only real thing in my life right now." We talked for 2 hours that day. About music, about dreams, about the crushing weight of expectations in his world and the quiet loneliness of mine. When our coffees were long cold, he glanced at his watch, his expression faltering. "I have to go," he said reluctantly, "but I want to see you again." We made plans to meet the following week, this time at a private screening room he'd reserved. The secrecy was both thrilling and terrifying. We were creating something precious in the shadows, something that couldn't survive in the light. Over the next few months, These secret meetings became my lifeline. I learned the real him. Leo was the name he whispered to me when no one else was listening. I learned that he hated the taste of coffee but drank it anyway because that's what idols did. I learned that he had a small scar on his chin from falling off a bike as a child, and that he sometimes cried himself to sleep after particularly harsh performances. One evening, as we sat in the dim light of a quiet rooftop bar overlooking the city, he took my hand. "Sometimes I wonder if this is all a dream," he said, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "If I'll wake up tomorrow and realize I imagined you." I squeezed his hand. "I'm real, Leo. I promise." He leaned closer, and for a moment I thought he might kiss me. But he stopped, our faces inches apart, and simply breathed the same air. The tension between us was so thick I could taste it. "I can't," he whispered, more to himself than to me. "I can't risk you." That night, when I returned to my empty apartment, I found a package at my door. Inside was a simple silver ring, size too small for any of my fingers but fitting perfectly on my pinky. There was no note, but I knew it was from him. It became our silent language. The ring meant, "I'm thinking of you." A particular emoji sequence in our encrypted chats meant, "I miss you desperately." A specific song he'd release would contain lyrics he'd written about us, hidden in plain sight for anyone to interpret, but meant only for me. Our intimacy grew in these small, stolen moments. Once, when the power went out during a thunderstorm at my apartment, he called me immediately and we stayed on the line for hours, our voices the only light in the darkness. Another time, he showed up at my door at 3 a.m., having slipped away from his dorm, and we just lay on my living room floor, listening to the city breathe around us. The closest we came to anything more was during a movie night at the private screening room. The film was forgotten as we sat in the plush seats, my head resting on his shoulder, his arm draped around me. I could feel the warmth of his body seeping into mine, could smell the faint scent of the expensive cologne he wore for events but never for our meetings. "Jen," he whispered against my hair. He didn't finish. Instead, he tilted my chin up, and when he leaned in this time, he didn't stop. His lips were soft and hesitant at first, then more confident, tasting of mint and something uniquely Leo. It was over too quickly, leaving me breathless and wanting more. "I shouldn't have done that," he said, but there was no regret in his voice, only something that sounded like resignation. "Don't say that," I replied, my fingers tracing the line of his jaw. "Don't you dare take it back." He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch. "I won't. But you have to understand how dangerous this is. Not just for me, but for you too." The danger was always present, a shadow hanging over our stolen moments. I became an expert at discretion, at creating plausible deniability for my sudden disappearances, at looking through him when we occasionally crossed paths in public. Once, at a music show, our eyes met across the crowded studio, and for a heartbeat the world fell away. I saw the same longing in his gaze that I felt in my own, and it both thrilled and terrified me. Winter came, bringing with it the season of award shows. I watched him on screen, a vision in tailored suits and flawless makeup, accepting trophies with practiced humility. Each award he accepted felt like another brick in the wall between us, another reminder that I loved someone who belonged to the world. One night, after a particularly glamorous event, he showed up at my door, still in his expensive suit but with the tie loosened and the jacket draped over his arm. His hair was disheveled, and his eyes held a weariness that went beyond physical exhaustion. "I couldn't go back to the dorm," he said by way of explanation, stepping inside my small apartment that suddenly felt inadequate in the presence of someone so polished. "Not tonight." I didn't ask questions. I just took his jacket and led him to the sofa, where he collapsed with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of the world. In my bathroom, I found a spare toothbrush and one of my oversized t-shirts. When I returned, he had fallen asleep sitting up, his head tilted against the cushions, his face softened in sleep, stripped of the performance mask he wore so expertly. I covered him with a blanket and sat on the floor nearby, watching him breathe. In sleep, he wasn't Leo the idol. He was Leo, the man who had shown me more kindness than I deserved, the man whose laughter had become my favorite sound, the man whose touch could calm the storm in my soul. Sometime in the middle of the night, I felt a gentle touch on my shoulder. "Come here," he whispered, and I moved to the sofa, curling into the small space beside him. He wrapped his arms around me and I rested my head on his chest, listening to the steady rhythm of his heartbeat. It was the most intimate we had ever been, fully pressed against each other in the quiet darkness of my apartment. "I dream about this," he murmured against my hair. "About being normal, about falling asleep next to you and waking up with you still here." "Is that what you want?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. "Normal? I want you," he replied simply. "Normal is just impossible." We lay in silence after that, the space between words filled with everything we couldn't say aloud. The morning sun found us still entangled on the sofa, a tangled mess of limbs and blankets. The sight of him in my t-shirt, with sleep-mussed hair and a slight stubble on his chin, made my heart ache with a mixture of joy and sorrow. "This can't last," he said as if reading my thoughts. "Sooner or later, someone will find out. The company, the fans." "I know," I replied, though the words tasted like ash in my mouth. "But it's worth it, isn't it?" He tilted my face toward his thumb stroking my cheek. "Every moment with you has been worth everything." The knock on my door that afternoon sent us both scrambling. He was back in his suit, looking every bit the idol I'd first seen on that magazine cover, while I frantically gathered signs of his presence. The spare toothbrush, the coffee mug with his lipstick prints. "Stay in the bedroom," I whispered, my heart pounding. "Don't make a sound." It was my neighbor, Mrs. Kim, wanting to borrow sugar. As I chatted with her at the door, I could feel the invisible wall between my two lives. This mundane neighbor who knew nothing of the celebrity hiding in my bedroom, and the secret world I shared with a man millions adored. When she finally left, I found Leo standing by my window, looking down at the street below. "They're out there," he said, pointing to a small group of fans gathered near the building entrance. "They must have tracked me somehow." Panic seized me. "What do we do?" "I'll go out the back," he said, already moving toward the door. "Oh, follow me. Don't even look out the window until I text you that I'm clear." He paused, taking my face in his hands. "Be careful, Jen. From now on, we need to be more careful than ever." His kiss was quick, desperate, a collision of fear and longing. When he left, the apartment felt emptier than ever before. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of near misses. We reduced our meetings to encrypted texts and late-night phone calls, his voice sometimes cracking with exhaustion after a 17-hour day of schedules. I learned to read between the lines of his public appearances, the subtle way his gaze would sweep the crowd during performances. Searching, hoping. "Sometimes I think I see you," he told me one night, his voice tinny through the phone. "In the sea of faces, I'll catch a glimpse of someone who reminds me of you, and for a second, I can't breathe." "I'm there whenever I can be," I admitted, my fingers tracing the silver ring on my pinky. "Standing at the back, hiding in plain sight." "It's not enough," he said, and I could hear the frustration in his tone. "I want to hold your hand in public. I want to introduce you as my friend, at least. But I can't even do that." Our relationship had become an exercise in longing. Each brief encounter intensifying the hunger for more, each separation deepening the ache of our forced distance. The world saw a perfectly polished idol, rising higher in fame with each passing day. They didn't see the man who sometimes fell asleep on the phone with me, too exhausted to say goodbye, or the one who saved every message I ever sent him in a password-protected folder on his phone. The threat of discovery became a constant, shadowy presence. We developed a code system for emergencies, a specific emoji sequence that meant delete everything. We might be compromised. I lived with my finger hovering over the delete button, my heart skipping every time my phone buzzed with an unknown number. One evening, as I was closing up the cafe where I worked, a young woman approached the counter. She couldn't have been more than 18, with a phone case covered in photos of Elysian. "Are you a fan?" she asked, her eyes bright with enthusiasm. I hesitated, carefully arranging the last of the clean mugs. "I follow their music," I said evasively. Her face lit up. "Leo is my bias. He's been acting strange lately, though. Don't you think?" My blood ran cold. "Strange how?" "Well," she leaned forward conspiratorially, "there are rumors online. Some fans think he's dating someone secretly. There's this one forum where they analyze every little thing. His facial expressions, what he wears, who he follows on social media." The world tilted slightly. I gripped the edge of the counter, forcing a neutral expression. Idols are always rumored to be dating. It comes with the territory.
Maybe, she said. Her expression was unconvinced, but Leo seems different, softer somehow. In his recent live, he was wearing this silver ring. It looked just like one the fans have spotted in the background of some of Jin's photos.
She watched me too closely, her gaze assessing. I realized with a jolt that she might be fishing, testing me. Jin? I asked, my voice barely steady. You know the model? The one who sometimes gets into trouble for being too outspoken about Elysian? She frowned at my blank expression.
Come on, everyone in the fandom knows about Jin. Tall, broad shoulders. Looks like he stepped out of a historical drama. The way he looks at Leo during music shows.
My thoughts raced. There was another Jin. A public one, someone I'd never considered. Someone whose devotion to Elysian had apparently become fan gossip. I don't really follow fan communities much, I managed, forcing a smile. I just enjoy the music. She nodded, apparently satisfied. Well, if you haven't seen the theories, you should look them up. It's fascinating how fans piece things together. After she left, I locked the cafe door and leaned against it, my legs feeling like they might give out. I pulled out my phone, my hands shaking as I typed Elysian Jin theories into the search bar. There it was. Pages upon pages of analysis, fan-circulated photos, and speculation. There was the other Jin, looking remarkably like me, attending fan signs and concerts. Fans had pointed out moments when Leo's eyes had seemingly found him in the crowd. There were screenshots from old live streams where a tall, broad-shouldered figure could be seen in the background. And there, in a grainy photo taken by a fan, was the silver ring on my pinky finger, unmistakably similar to one the other Jin wore. The realization sent a chill through me. We had been so careful, but someone else, a public Jin, had inadvertently created a smoke screen for our private relationship. At the same time, this public persona had drawn attention to details I'd thought were hidden. I sent the encrypted emergency code to Leo, a moon followed by a broken heart. His response came almost immediately. Are you safe? I called him, needing to hear his voice. Leo, there's another Jin. A model.
Fans think you're involved with him.
Silence on the other end, then a weary sigh. I know about him. I saw the theories months ago. It's why I felt safer meeting you. They were looking in the wrong direction. But they're connecting the dots, I said, my urgency mounting. They saw my ring, in a photo someone took of me working at the cafe. Where are you now? He asked, his tone suddenly sharp. At the cafe. I'm closing up. Go home. Lock your doors. I'll call you when I'm somewhere secure. The line went dead, leaving me with the rapid beating of my own heart. The safe bubble we had created around ourselves had burst. That night, Leo called from a burner phone, the connection poor and crackling. Either, simply watching as my manager escorted me to the subway entrance. Is everything okay? He asked, and I could only nod, unable to explain the growing fear that was becoming a constant companion. The next few weeks brought more of the same, strangers showing up at, and through it, at me. I think about you all the time. I wonder if you're safe. If anyone's bothered you. I hope not. He paused, and I could see the struggle in his expression. I keep thinking about that night in the parking structure, the sun rising over the city. I replay it in my mind sometimes, not the terrible part.
The part where you were there. We need to be more discreet, he said, the words clipped. No more meeting at regular places. No more public appearances, even by accident.
We haven't. I started to protest, but he cut me off. You've been seen, Jin, by fans who know what to look for. They may have the wrong Jin, but they're looking for someone like you. His words stung, though I knew he wasn't trying to be cruel. What are you saying? I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. I'm saying we need a cooling-off period, just until this dies down. The finality in his tone sent a wave of panic through me. A cooling-off period. For how long? I don't know. A month. Maybe longer. I couldn't breathe. Leo, you can't be serious. I am, he said, and the crackle of the line seemed to emphasize the distance between us. It's not safe. For either of us. You especially. You think those fans are harmless? They've already started trying to find the cafe where you work. The world tilted again. How do they know?
They know everything, Jen. That's how this world works.
We fell into a silence that stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. I'm sorry, he finally said, and the pain in his voice was so raw it made my chest ache. I never wanted this for you. For us. You're not just apologizing for the fans, are you? I asked, though I already knew the answer. No, he admitted softly. I'm sorry for putting you in danger. For making you part of something that could destroy you.
Destroy us, I corrected, and then regretted it immediately. I was adding pressure when he was already breaking. Get some sleep, he said, already backing away. We'll talk soon.
The call ended before I could say goodbye, before I could beg him to change his mind. I sat in the dark of my apartment, the silence so complete I could hear the refrigerator humming from the kitchen, the traffic from the street below, the frantic beating of my own heart. The cooling-off period had begun. The days that followed were an exercise in absence. I checked my phone compulsively, though I knew there would be nothing. The encrypted messaging app remained silent. His social media accounts continued to post company-approved content. Glamorous photos, polished behind-the-scenes videos, perfectly choreographed glimpses into a life I no longer had access to. Once, during a music show broadcast, the camera panned to a lesion in the audience during another group's performance. For a brief second, the frame caught Leo's profile. He was looking down, a small, sad smile on his face, tracing something on the back of his hand with his thumb. The same way he used to trace circles on my palm. The camera cut away, but the image burned into my memory. A private moment broadcast to millions, understood only by me. The weeks turned into a month. The other Jen, the model, appeared at another fan sign. The online forums buzzed with renewed speculation. I watched from a distance, a ghost in my own life story as fans pieced together a narrative that was both true and false. They had the right shape, but the wrong substance. Spring arrived, bringing with it television's comeback announcement. The promotional cycle began with teaser photos, one featuring Leo in dramatic, artistic lighting, looking directly at the camera with an intensity that made me catch my breath. The comments section filled with fans praising his visual, analyzing the concept, and yes, still speculating about his love life. Leo's emotional lately. One comment read, "You can see it in his eyes."
Another replied, "It's the concept. He's an artist, he's conveying emotion."
But a third said, "I still think it's because of that model Jin. Did you see how Leo looked at the crowd during the last concert? He was searching for someone." I closed the browser window, unable to read more. The constant monitoring of fan discussions was becoming a form of self-torture, a way of staying connected to him that was only amplifying my loneliness. At work, I found myself smiling at customers with an emptiness that mirrored the hollow space inside me. My hands moved through familiar tasks, taking orders, making coffee, cleaning counters, while my mind drifted to memories I was trying so hard to suppress. The way Leo's eyes crinkled when he laughed, the specific scent of his cologne, the warmth of his body next to mine on that one night he stayed over. 2 months into our silence, I received a message from an unknown number. "It's me. Don't reply. Just read." My heart stuttered as I opened the attached audio file. It was a new song, just Leo's voice accompanied by a simple piano. The lyrics spoke of longing, of watching someone from a distance, of loving in silence. At the very end, he whispered something so softly I had to listen multiple times to make it out. "I miss you." I played the message on repeat until the words lost their meaning, until all that remained was the sound of his voice, a ghost in my ear, a presence that couldn't touch me. The following week, as I was leaving work, I noticed a black car parked down the street from the cafe. At first, I dismissed it as coincidence. This was a busy commercial area after all. But then I saw it again the next day, and the day after that. The driver never got out, never spoke to anyone, just watched. My hands trembled as I texted my manager that I was feeling ill and needed to leave early. I took the long way home, ducking into stalls and changing direction multiple times, my paranoia reaching new heights. When I finally arrived at my apartment building, breathless and shaken, the black car was nowhere in sight. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the building, every distant siren, sent a jolt of adrenaline through me. The world, which had once felt so ordinary, now seemed filled with threats, real or imagined. I had stepped into Leo's reality, where even shadows had eyes. Days later, as I was stocking shelves in the back room of the cafe, a customer approached the counter. "Excuse me," a woman's voice called out. "Is Jin working today?" My manager replied, "He just left for the day. Can I take a message?" There was a pause. "No, that's okay. I'm just an old friend trying to reconnect." The exchange sent a chill down my spine. I stayed hidden in the back room until I heard the bell on the door jingle indicating she'd left. Peeking through the small window in the door, I caught a glimpse of her as she walked away. A woman in her late 30s with a press pass dangling from her neck. That evening, I received a cryptic message from Leo. "They're getting closer. Time is running out." My blood ran cold. "Who?" I typed, my fingers fumbling with the screen. His response was immediate. "Everyone." The countdown had begun. 2 days later, I found it tucked under my apartment door. A plain white envelope with no return address, no stamp. Inside was a single photograph. Me and Leo entering that quiet corner cafe in Hongi months ago. The image was grainy, taken from a distance across the street, but unmistakable. Our heads were bent together, a secret passing between us like a current. The bottom of the photo held 3 words typed in a clean, menacing font. "We know." My legs gave out, and I sank to the floor, the photograph trembling in my hand. The photograph wasn't dated. It could have been taken yesterday or months ago. The timing of its delivery was a message in itself, a threat hanging in the air. I considered running, packing a bag and disappearing to some small town where no one knew my face. But where would I go? And how could I leave without saying goodbye to him? That night, sleep was impossible. Every shadow seemed to move, every sound became a footstep in the hallway. I sat in the dark, clutching my phone, waiting for a message that would either save me or condemn me. Near dawn, my phone buzzed. A single word from an unknown number. "Now." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my jacket and keys, my movements practiced from our earlier days of secrecy. As I slipped out of my building, I scanned the street, half expecting to see flashing cameras or reporters with microphones. But there was nothing, just the early morning quiet of a city still sleeping. The taxi dropped me several blocks from our designated location, an abandoned parking structure near the Han River. The concrete smelled of damp and decay as I climbed the stairs to the top level, my footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. He was there, waiting for me by the railing, looking out at the water reflecting the emerging dawn. In the dim light, he looked fragile, almost translucent. The oversized hoodie and jeans did little to disguise the tension in his shoulders, the rigid set of his jaw. "You got it too," he said, not turning around. "Someone left it at my door." He finally faced me, and the devastation in his eyes knocked the breath from my lungs. "The company got an anonymous email yesterday, with the same photo." My hands felt cold despite the mild morning air. "What did they say?" "What do you think they said?" He replied, a bitter smile twisting his lips. "They demanded an explanation." I denied everything, of course. Told them it was photoshopped, that it was part of some fan conspiracy to create drama. "Do they believe you?" He shook his head slowly. "They've suspended me from upcoming activities. Indefinitely. They said they're managing the situation." The phrase sounded ominous, clinical. Managing it how? "I don't know," he admitted, and I could hear the fear beneath the calm exterior. "But they gave me an ultimatum. Either I voluntarily end whatever this is and cooperate with whatever narrative they construct, or—" He didn't need to finish. The unspoken alternative hung between us. Legal action, public shaming, career destruction. Not just for him, but potentially for me too. "So this is it?" I asked, the words catching in my throat. "We just end it?" He stepped closer, reaching for my hand before stopping himself, remembering the cameras that might be watching even now. "They want me to release a statement tomorrow, denying any romantic involvement, suggesting that my recent distant behavior was due to exhaustion and creative differences within the group." He looked away, toward the river, where the rising sun was painting the water in shades of pink and gold. They even suggested mentioning the other Jin, the model, as a way to deflect. "They want you to throw him under the bus?" I asked, horrified. It wouldn't be the first time an agency has used a decoy to distract from the real story, he said, the resignation in his voice breaking my heart. But I refused. I told them I wouldn't drag an innocent person into this. What will you say instead? I asked, though I was terrified of the answer. He turned back to me, and in the early morning light, I saw the exhaustion etched into every line of his face. I don't know yet. I'm still trying to find a way to deny us without denying you. The tears I had been holding back finally escaped, tracing paths down my cheeks. I turned away, embarrassed by my weakness, by the unfairness of it all. Don't cry, he said softly, and I could feel the warmth of him behind me, though he didn't touch me. Please don't cry. If this is the last memory I have of you, I don't want it to be of you crying. I wiped at my face with the back of my hand, forcing myself to turn back to him. When? Tomorrow.
Noon press conference.
Online broadcast. A year's worth of memories flashed through my mind in that moment. The way he looked at me the day we met, the gentle brush of his fingers against mine, the night he stayed over, the stolen kisses and whispered conversations. All of it about to be publicly erased. I could disappear, I offered, though we both knew it was too late. Leave Seoul. Go somewhere no one knows me. They'd find you, he said, not unkindly. And even if they didn't, it'd destroy my career anyway. This has to be handled carefully. We stood in silence as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the concrete floor. The city was beginning to wake up below us, the distant sounds of traffic and construction growing louder. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate even as they left my lips. I never wanted to hurt you. You didn't, he replied, and I could see he meant it. Being with you is the realest thing in my life, worth whatever comes next. His phone buzzed, and he glanced at it with a grim expression. I have to go. They're tracking my location. Will I see you again? I asked, but the answer was already forming in the hollow space of my heart. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, I heard everything we both feared. After tomorrow, it might be safer if we don't contact each other. For a while. For how long? I pressed, needing something concrete to hold on to. He shook his head slowly. I don't know. Months.
Years.
Maybe. He didn't need to finish. Maybe forever. The finality of it settled over me like a shroud. I wanted to beg him not to leave, to find another way, to fight for us. But looking at him, at the defeat in his shoulders, the weariness in his eyes, I knew there was no fight left to be fought. Not today.
Take this, he said, slipping a small burner phone from his pocket. It's untraceable.
One number saved. Mine.
Use it only in emergencies.
If something happens. I took it, my fingers brushing against his in a contact so brief it barely registered. What kind of emergency? He looked at me for a long moment, his expression unreadable. If anyone approaches you, reporters, fans, anyone asking questions about me, or if you feel like you're being watched. And what happens then? He hesitated. Then I'll know it's really begun. The managing? I asked, using the company's clinical term. He nodded, his gaze drifting toward the horizon. I have to go, Jin. They'll come looking for me. I watched as he walked away, his figure growing smaller against the backdrop of the waking city. I wanted to call out to him, to say one last thing, but the words caught in my throat. What could I possibly say that hadn't already been said or left unsaid? When he disappeared down the stairwell, I stood there alone, the burner phone feeling heavy in my pocket like a stone. The morning sun was fully risen now, casting the parking structure in a harsh, unforgiving light, and everything looked different, sharper, more dangerous. The next 24 hours were a blur of anxiety and anticipation. I couldn't bring myself to watch any news or entertainment programs. Instead, I walked aimlessly through the city, my phone turned off, trying to disconnect from the world that was about to collapse around me. In a quiet park, I found myself staring at a couple holding hands, their casual intimacy a painful reminder of what I was losing. That night, I barely slept, waking to every small sound, my mind racing through possible scenarios. Would they believe him? Would they dig deeper? Would they find me? At 11:55 a.m., I was sitting on my living room floor, my back against the sofa, my laptop open to the entertainment company's official channel. My hands trembled as I clicked on the live stream that was scheduled to begin at noon. The screen showed a plain stage with a single podium. After what felt like an eternity, the doors opened and a team of executives filed in, followed by Leo. He was dressed immaculately in a tailored black suit, his silver hair styled perfectly, not a strand out of place. He looked every bit the idol the world adored, but I could see the strain in the set of his jaw, the forced stillness of his posture. This was the performance of a lifetime. The CEO spoke first, droning on about the company's commitment to integrity and their concern for their artists' well-being. I barely registered the words, my focus entirely on Leo, who stood beside the podium, his expression carefully neutral. Then it was his turn. He approached the podium, adjusting the microphone, his movements practiced and precise. For a long moment, he simply stood there, gathering himself, his gaze sweeping across the invisible audience. Recently, he began, his voice steady despite the tremor I could almost feel from across the screen. There have been rumors circulating regarding my personal life. He paused, and in that pause, I could feel the weight of every unspoken word between us. I want to address these rumors directly, he continued. The speculation that has been growing online, the fan theories, the so-called evidence, all of it has been difficult, not just for me, but for the people I care about. He looked down, as if gathering strength, before continuing. The truth is, I have been going through a difficult period. The pressures of this industry, the constant scrutiny, the expectations, it's taken a toll on me. He looked up then, directly into the camera, and for a heartbeat, I felt as though he were looking straight at me. But I want to make one thing clear. While I have formed a close connection with someone during this challenging time, it is not what it has been portrayed to be. The relationship that has been speculated about online, between myself and another public figure, is simply not true. He didn't mention the other Jin by name, but the implication was clear enough. I apologize to everyone I've disappointed, he said, and the regret in his voice was so genuine it made my chest ache. To my members, who have stood by me. To my company, who has supported me. And most of all, to my fans, who have given me everything. He took a deep breath, and I could see the slight tremor in his hands as he gripped the edges of the podium. I need some time to reflect and to focus on my mental health. I'll be taking a break from all activities for the foreseeable future. I hope you can understand. With that, he stepped back from the podium, and the CEO moved forward to field questions from the press. The stream continued, but I closed my laptop. The final image of him burned into my mind. Standing alone on that stage, a perfect performance of a man telling the world a partial truth to protect the whole of it. The hours that followed passed in a surreal haze. I wandered through my apartment, touching objects as though they belonged to someone else. The silver ring on my pinky felt like a branding, a mark of my transgression. When I caught my reflection in the mirror, I barely recognized the person staring back. Eyes hollow, face pale, the ghost of a love that was now officially declared false. The next day was worse. Walking to work, I felt a dozen pairs of eyes on me, though I knew it was just my paranoia. Every person on the street seemed to be studying me, their glances lingering a second too long. At the cafe, my manager kept looking at me with a mixture of pity and concern. "You saw the news?" he asked, and I could only nod, my throat too tight to form words. "That must be difficult. If you only knew." Throughout my shift, customers whispered in corners, their phones displaying articles and screenshots from yesterday's press conference. I kept my head down, my hands busy with routine tasks, my mind replaying the last few months like a film reel stuck on a loop. That evening, as I was closing up, I noticed someone waiting outside, leaning against the opposite wall, trying to look casual but failing. My heart hammered against my ribs as I recognized the face from the grainy photograph that had been left at my door. A fan who frequented the online forums, one of the most vocal believers in the Leo Jin theory. I called my manager from the back room, my voice shaking. "Can you walk me out tonight? I think someone's waiting for me." When we emerged together, the fan's eyes widened with recognition, and with something else, something darker than admiration. She didn't approach, but she didn't leave either, just watched as my manager escorted me to the subway entrance. "Is everything okay?" he asked, and I could only nod, unable to explain the growing fear that was becoming a constant companion. The next few weeks brought more of the same. Strangers showing up at the cafe, questions about my relationship with Elysian, photographs taken of me from a distance. Once I found a note tucked under my windshield wiper. "We know it was you." The burner phone remained silent, though I checked it obsessively. The emergency line that connected me to him stayed dormant, a quiet reminder that the connection was there but couldn't be used. The silence was both a comfort and a torture. 2 months after the press conference, as autumn painted the city in shades of amber and crimson, I received a text from an unknown number. "It's me. Don't reply. Check your email." My hands trembled as I opened the email on my phone. The subject line read simply, "For your eyes only." The message contained only a video file. I plugged in headphones, my heart pounding, and clicked play. The video showed Leo in what appeared to be a recording studio, though it was empty except for him. He looked thinner, paler, the vibrant energy that defined him dimmed to a faint glow. His silver hair had grown out, revealing the natural dark roots, creating a stark contrast that mirrored the conflict within him. "Hi, Jin," he began, and the sound of my name from his lips after so long sent a jolt through me. "I know you're not supposed to be seeing this."
They've got me under surveillance. Wow, more than usual now.
He attempted a weak smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry, I've been quiet. They took my devices. Said I needed to disconnect to heal." He made air quotes around the words, a bitter twist to his lips. "But I found a way to get this message to you. Through a friend I still trust." He looked down, picking at a loose thread on the sleeve of his hoodie. "The break is indefinite.
They're deciding how to reintegrate me.
There's talk of solo work, maybe acting, anything to shift the narrative."
His gaze lifted, and he looked directly into the camera lens at me. "But that's not why I'm sending this."
I needed to see you even if you can't see me back. I keep replaying our last meeting at the parking structure, the way the sun was coming up. I replay it in my mind sometimes. Not the terrible part. The part where you were there, real even if only for a moment." He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I knew so well. "Do you remember what I said that morning? That being with you was the realest thing in my life? I still believe that, even more now, surrounded by all this manufactured reality." He paused, and the silence stretched, filled with everything we couldn't say. "I wear a ring sometimes," he said quietly, holding up his hand to reveal a simple silver band on his index finger.
Not the same as yours.
"Different design. They think it's for fashion. Only I know what it means." I instinctively touched the ring on my pinky, the metal warm against my skin from the constant presence of my touch. "I wonder what you're doing right now," he continued. "If you're working at the cafe, if the autumn colors look the same from your window as they do from mine, if you ever think of me." The question hung in the air, rhetorical and yet so intimate it made my chest ache. "I think about you all the time," he admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "I wonder if you're safe, if anyone's bothered you, if fans have shown up at your door. I hope not." He leaned closer to the camera, and despite the digital distance, I felt the urge to reach out and touch the screen. "If they have, if anyone makes you feel unsafe, use the phone. That's what it's for. Not just for emergencies, but for anything. Just press the call button once, then hang up. I'll know it's you, that you're thinking of me." A small, sad smile played on his lips. "I know that's not much, but it's all I can offer right now. A way to know you're out there even if we can't speak." He checked over his shoulder, as though someone might be listening. "I have to go soon.
They don't know I'm here."
But I wanted to send this, to remind you, to remind myself that what we had was real, that it still is." He stood up, moving toward the camera as if to end the recording, but then he paused. "The other day, I was walking in a park near where I'm staying. There was this couple sitting on a bench, not talking, just sharing headphones. The woman was leaning her head on the man's shoulder. For a second, I felt this pang. Not jealousy exactly, just this awareness of everything I can't have right now, everything I want." He shook his head slightly. "I'm sorry. That's not fair to you. I wanted you to know that I see those moments everywhere now, and I think of you." He reached out, and for a second, I thought he was touching the camera lens, but he was just gesturing toward it as if trying to bridge the distance between us. "Take care of yourself, Jin."
"Please."
and know that somewhere in the city, someone loves you. Always. The screen went dark, and I was left in the silence of my apartment, the video file downloaded and saved on my phone. A secret treasure in a world that felt increasingly hostile. I watched it again and then a third time, until the words became etched into my memory, until the cadence of his speech became familiar again. That night, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I found myself pacing the small space of my apartment, the city lights blinking outside my window like 1,000 distant stars. His words echoed in my mind, not just from the video, but from all the months we had shared. The whispered promises, the vulnerable admissions, the quiet moments of connection that had sustained us through the secrecy. At 3:17 a.m. I made a decision. I retrieved the burner phone, my fingers hovering over the call button. Just one press, then hang up. That's what he had said. A signal, nothing more. I pressed the button. The screen lit up for a second, then went dark. I placed the phone on my nightstand and lay back down, my heart racing. I didn't know if he would receive the notification, if he was even in a position to check. For all I knew, the phone was being monitored, and this small act of defiance could put us both in greater danger. But I had to do it. I needed to send that signal across the darkness, that small acknowledgement that I had received his message, that I remembered, that I cared. The next morning, as I was preparing for work, the burner phone buzzed with a single text from an unknown number. I felt it. 2 words, yet they carried the weight of a conversation. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes for the first time in weeks, and typed back, "Me too." We settled into a new rhythm. Silent communication through the burner phone, a series of signals that only we understood. A single buzz meant, "I'm thinking of you." 2 buzzes meant, "Stay safe." A buzz at 11 p.m. meant, "Make a wish." The secret language became my lifeline, a thread connecting us across the distance. On difficult days, when the stares felt too intense, when the whispers followed me down the street, I would retreat to the privacy of my apartment and press the call button once, waiting for the silent acknowledgement that sometimes came within minutes, sometimes hours. Winter approached, bringing with it Television's year-end performances. I watched on my laptop as the group took the stage without Leo, a 5-member formation that looked incomplete, off balance. During their acceptance speech for Artist of the Year, the leader mentioned him briefly, saying how much they missed him and hoped for his return. The camera panned to the empty space where Leo should have stood, and I felt the absence like a physical pain. The other Jin, the model who had inadvertently provided cover for our relationship, continued to appear at events, sometimes wearing silver jewelry that set the online forums buzzing again. The theories evolved, becoming more elaborate, more desperate. Some fans claimed to have insider information, others analyzed every pixel of every photo for clues. Through it all, the real truth remained hidden in plain sight, our secret safe behind a smoke screen of speculation. One evening in December, as snow dusted the city in a layer of white, I received a series of urgent buzzes from the burner phone. 3 in quick succession, our signal for emergency. My hand shook as I waited for the follow-up message. When it came, it was brief but chilling. "They know about the phone. Burn it. Immediately." I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the phone, wrapped it in a kitchen towel, and took a hammer from the toolbox under my sink. With each strike, I felt a piece of our connection shattering. When I was done, I gathered the pieces and scattered them in different public trash cans throughout the city, a trail of broken communication. That night, I slept fitfully, waking at every sound, the silence of the apartment now absolute. The burner phone had been our only connection, our only lifeline. Without it, I was truly alone, cut off from him completely. The next day at work was agonizing. Every customer who looked at me a second too long, every person who asked if I was okay, sent a wave of panic through me. By mid-afternoon, my manager noticed my distress. "Jin, go home," he said gently. "You look like you're about to collapse." I wanted to protest, but he was right. Every muscle in my body was coiled with tension, my nerves raw and exposed. As I left the cafe, I noticed a black sedan parked across the street. The same type of car I had seen months earlier, the one that had triggered my paranoia. Now, with a warning about the phone, the sight sent a chill down my spine. I turned in the opposite direction, my footsteps quickening, my mind racing. I didn't go home. Instead, I walked to the nearest subway station, jumping on a train without checking the destination. I rode it to the end of the line, then got off and waited for the next train going in the opposite direction, losing myself in the rhythm of the city's underground veins. Hours later, when I finally returned to my neighborhood, the black sedan was gone. I circled the block twice before daring to approach my building. Nothing seemed out of place, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a persistent itch at the back of my neck. That night, I couldn't sleep. I sat in the dark, my back against the wall, listening to the building settle around me. Every creak, every distant siren, every footstep in the hallway set my heart racing. I had no way to contact him, no way to know if he was safe. The silence that had once been a comfort now felt like a void, an absence where a connection should be. The following weeks blurred into a monotony of fear and anticipation. I changed my routine, taking different routes to work, varying my schedule, avoiding places we had once frequented. I scanned crowds constantly, my gaze darting from face to face, looking for threats, for familiar features, for anything out of the ordinary. Christmas arrived, and with it, Elysian's special comeback stage as a 6-member group. The news had broken a week earlier. Leo was returning, not as a solo artist or actor, but rejoining his group. The company's statement was carefully worded. After a period of reflection and healing, Leo is ready to return to his activities with Elysian. We appreciate the fans' continued support and understanding. I watched the performance on a small television in the break room at work, the volume turned down, low. He looked different, thinner, paler, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. But he was there, center stage, moving with the same fluid grace that had first captivated me. The music was building to its final, explosive crescendo, and Leo was supposed to take his final position with the rest of the group. But suddenly Leo stops. He completely breaks the choreography, stepping away from the formation and walking straight toward the front edge of the stage. The other members glance at him in confusion, and the stadium cameras frantically scramble to capture his sudden movement. Leo grips the microphone with both hands, his knuckles turning white. His deep dark brown eyes are locked onto the main camera lens with a terrifying, iron resolve. The entire arena plunges into a shocked, heavy silence. I have an announcement. Leo's voice rings out through the speakers, clear and trembling with an undeniable honesty. My agency spent months forcing me to hide, trying to make me pretend that my life is a manufactured lie. But I am done hiding. I am gay, and I have a boyfriend. He is an ordinary man, the only real thing I have ever loved, and I will no longer live in shame. A tidal wave of audible gasps and stunned silence crashes over the stadium. The stage lights gleam off the single silver ring he wears on his index finger, matching the one I wear on my pinky. He looks straight into the camera one last time, with an expression that is both heartbreaking and full of love, a look meant only for me. And in that moment, I understand what he has done. He has chosen me. He has chosen us. He has thrown away his entire career, his entire life, for the chance that we might be free. The screen in the break room cut to black abruptly, replaced by the station's logo in a panicked anchor's voice. My colleagues were staring at the screen, mouths agape, their coffee cups frozen halfway to their lips. I couldn't breathe. The air in the small room had become thick and heavy, pressing in on me from all sides. My manager finally broke the silence. Did he just? The question hung in the air, unanswered, as reality crashed down around me. I pushed my chair back, the scraping sound unnaturally loud in the stunned silence. I need to go. I didn't wait for a response. I was already moving, pushing through the door, my legs carrying me out into the street before my mind had fully registered what was happening. The city around me continued its ordinary rhythm. Cars honking, people laughing, children shouting. But I was moving through it in a bubble of silence, a ghost in my own life. By the time I reached my apartment building, news alerts were exploding on every phone screen I passed. Headlines screamed in bold letters. Elysian's Leo comes out live on stage. Idol admits to secret relationship with ordinary man. Company stock plummets amid scandal. I locked the door behind me, my hand shaking so badly I could barely manage the key. The apartment was quiet, too quiet after the chaos of the outside world. I sank to the floor, my back against the door, and finally allowed myself to feel everything I had been suppressing. Fear, pride, panic, a fierce, overwhelming love. He had done this. For me, for us. The ring on my pinky finger suddenly felt heavier, as if it carried the weight of his confession, of our shared history, of the uncertain future that stretched before us. Hours passed. The afternoon light shifted to evening, casting long shadows across the room. I remained frozen in place, unable to move, to eat, to think. My phone buzzed repeatedly. Messages from concerned friends, from my manager, from numbers I didn't recognize. Then, amidst the endless buzzing, a distinct, painfully familiar vibration broke through. My heart leaped straight into my throat when I saw his private, encrypted number flashing on the screen. I answered with trembling fingers, my voice turning into a breathless whisper. Leo?
Jin. His voice came through the receiver, raspy, exhausted, but filled with a deep, beautiful relief.
I did it. I couldn't keep lying to the whole world while you were suffering in the shadows. I told them everything. I told them I love you. Tears blurred my vision as a wave of all-consuming love washed over me. Leo, your career, your whole life. Being with you is my only real life. Jin, he cut me off softly, his voice full of warmth. The agency is furious, but I don't care anymore. I'm already downstairs. I slipped away from security an hour ago. Just wait for me. We're finally going to be free. Together. Hearing his words, I smiled genuinely for the first time in ages. We began to eagerly anticipate our meeting, whispering about a future where we wouldn't have to hide anymore, our voices seemingly erasing this agonizing distance between us. I'll be waiting by the door, I promised quietly. Hurry, Leo. I miss you so much. I'm almost there, he replied. I love you, Jin. I love you too. The word cut off in my throat. A sudden, violent blow shook my broad shoulders. The black back door of the apartment from the fire escape violently burst open out of the darkness. Before I could even turn around, a sharp, blinding pain pierced right between my ribs. I gasped sharply, the phone slipping from my weakening fingers and dropping with a dull thud. Get away from the door, I managed to choke out, my vision starting to blur. There. I don't know if he heard me. I don't know if the message was sent. The world around me dissolved into a dizzying, agonizing haze of pain and confusion. The last thing I saw was the door swinging open, and in the doorway, a silhouette framed against the light, a silhouette that might have been him, reaching for me. The silence in the apartment after it all was over was absolute, a suffocating blanket that muffled everything but the frantic, desperate pounding on the door. The pounding belonged to him, of course, drawn by the abrupt end to our call, by a lover's intuition that something was terribly wrong. Jin! Open the door! His voice was raw with panic, each word a desperate plea. Jin, please. The police held him back, their voices calm but firm against his hysteria. Sir, you can't go in there. We're securing the scene.
I have to, he insisted, struggling against their grip. He's my...
The words caught in his throat as the door finally opened and paramedics emerged, their faces grim. They wheeled out a covered stretcher, the white sheet stained with a deep, ominous red that seemed to spread like a stain across the pristine fabric. I watched from somewhere else, from a place just beyond the threshold of the room, detached yet somehow still connected to the body on the stretcher, to the man falling to his knees in the hallway, to the chaos that had erupted from a single, violent act. He was an obsessive fan, one officer explained to another, his voice slow but carrying in the corridor. Found a letter in his pocket. Ranted about protecting Leo from false rumors and deceivers. Apparently, he'd been tracking Jin for weeks. Any chance the victim will make it? The second officer asked. The paramedic shook his head. Punctured lung.
Massive internal bleeding. Lost too much blood before we got here.
The words should have meant something to me. Fear, pain, finality. But I remained floating in this strange liminal space, observing the aftermath of my own ending. Leo's sobs echoed through the hallway, raw and unrestrained, a sound of pure agony that seemed to tear at the very fabric of the world. He reached for the stretcher as it passed, his fingers brushing against the covered form.
Don't take him, he begged, his voice breaking. Please don't take him away from me.
The officer's expression softened, but their duty remained. Sir, we need to transport him to the morgue for the investigation. Morgue. The word hung in the air, sterile and final.
Let me go with him, Leo pleaded, his composure completely shattered. Please.
Just let me say goodbye. They hesitated, exchanging glances, then finally nodded. One officer helped him to his feet, supporting him as he followed the paramedics towards the elevator. I drifted along behind, an invisible witness to this final journey. Downstairs, the chaos was worse. Media vans lined the street. Their satellite dishes pointed toward the building like metallic flowers seeking sunlight. Reporters shouted questions, their cameras flashing relentlessly. Police held back a growing crowd of fans, some crying, some angry, some simply confused by the unfolding tragedy. When they saw Leo emerging, supported by police, the noise escalated to a deafening roar. "Leo! What happened? Is it true you came out tonight? Were you involved with the victim?" Leo flinched at each question, his face pale and streaked with tears. He kept his head down, letting the officers guide him toward the waiting ambulance. I watched him climb in beside the covered stretcher, the doors closing to block out the world. As the ambulance pulled away, sirens wailing, I saw faces in the crowd. Some accusatory, some sympathetic, some hungry for details. This was the freedom he had chosen for us, the price of truth in a world that demanded entertainment. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and hushed voices. They led him to a small room in the morgue. Sterile and cold, with a single metal table in the center. The sheet was still, unnaturally still. "Do you need a moment alone?" asked one of the officers. Leo nodded, unable to speak. The door closed, and he stood there, motionless, for what felt like an eternity. Then, slowly, he approached the table. His fingers trembled as he reached for the sheet, pausing just before touching it. "I can't," he whispered to himself, to me, to whatever gods might be listening. "I can't see you like this." But he did. With a deep breath that seemed to take all his remaining strength, he lifted the corner of the sheet, revealing my face. Peaceful now, the pain and fear erased, leaving only the familiar features he had memorized, traced, kissed. He collapsed then, his body folding as though all strings had been cut, his sobs echoing off the tiled walls. He laid his head next to mine on the metal table, his tears wetting the cold surface, his fingers finding the silver ring on my pinky finger. "I'm so sorry," he cried, his words muffled against the table. "I thought I was saving us. I never meant. I never wanted this." He stayed like that for hours, until a gentle knock on the door reminded him that the world outside was still spinning, that consequences were gathering like storm clouds on the horizon. When he finally emerged, the hallway was crowded with people from his agency. Executives in tailored suits, managers with grim expressions, publicists already calculating damage control. They descended on him like vultures, their voices a cacophony of crisis management. "Leo, we need to issue a statement. You can't speak to the press without our approval. We've arranged for you to stay at an undisclosed location." He looked through them, his eyes vacant, as if they were ghosts he couldn't quite see. The CEO stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder that looked like a gesture of comfort, but felt like a claim. "Let's get you somewhere safe," he said, steering Leo away from the room, away from me.